everyone, it's Demi. Welcome to Avalon Priestess TV. And today we're talking about Morgan Le Fay and what it means to be a sisterhood goddess. So, in my mythology, in my way of thinking, there are three ways that somebody can be, or three main ways somebody can be a goddess of sisterhood. The first way is that in their stories and their mythology, they are always hanging out in teams. Yeah, so always hanging out in teams of usually other women, but often in just big groups of friends. An example of a goddess like this from more mainstream mythology would be Aphrodite. She's always hanging out with the muses, the charities. She doesn't go anywhere without a huge entourage. We don't usually think of Aphrodite as a goddess of sisterhood because her sexuality was weaponized to be used against other women. But in the stories, she always has an entourage of her besties around her at all times. Morgan Le Fay is the same. She comes from stories where she is one of many. She is one of 9 sisters in Avalon. She comes from this place where there are many women who rule inequality. And in fact, even in some of her naughtier stories where she kidnaps Lancelot and so on, often she's said to be hanging out and arguing with a best friend enchantress or a group of other enchantresses or witches who they can get up to mischief together. So she's a sisterhood goddess is always in a group. She's never on her own. And in Celtic spirituality, it means she's usually in a group of 3 or 9. We have 9 muses. We have the 9 goddesses / priestesses / queens of Avalon. We have the islands with 9 oracular women on them from the old Roman writings, and we have the Norns, which I think are in a 3, and we have the Fates, which are in a 3. Important numbers. Another description of a sisterhood goddess, in my opinion, is someone whose personality kind of smushes into the collective. It's a being or a goddess or a deity that doesn't have really clear, defined edges. Now, it's really hard looking at old deities these days because we have been remembering them from I'm doing this a lot today, we've been remembering them from a very patriarchal lens and a very modern patriarchal lens. And when we think about, say, the Greeks and the Romans, we have dissected them down from what they used to be. For example, Aphrodite, my evangelical will always talk about Aphrodite if I have the chance, goddess. She was a goddess of absolutely freaking everything. She was a goddess of love, of life, of money, of good fortune, of luck, of war. There was nothing she didn't touch. But through the patriarchal Christian system and lens, she got demoted just to, she's a love goddess. She's about sexy, cute, flirty things, and that's it. Yeah. So the breadth and scope of a lot of goddesses got really, really narrowed. And there's that point. And then there is another point of, for some goddesses, they're just kind of a bit misty at the edges. It's hard to tell where one ends and one begins. And this happens a lot more for the Celtic goddesses because we don't have much written down about them. With Aphrodite, we have myths, we have inscriptions, we have temples, we have stories, we have all the other goddesses that turned into her. We have a lot. With goddesses like Rhiannon and Morgan Le Fay and Anya, we don't have a lot. Yeah. And with Morgan Le Fay, she has this edge of blending in and out of other goddesses. She blends in and out of the Morrigan sometimes. She blends in and out of Madron sometimes. She's kind of quite Rhiannon-esque in some ways. She appears as fairy queens across Western Europe, and she just pops up in the most unlikely of places. And yet, when you try to define her, she resists definition. And in fact, I don't think she's really that interested in explicit definition. Yeah. So there are some goddesses who are born to be mysteries, whose edges kind of blend with others, and that's how they like it. For example, in my work with Morgan Le Fay, as a priestess of Morgan Le Fay for over a decade, how old am I? Yes, over a decade. She will very, very happily refer you on to other people. She will refer you on to other goddesses. She will get you working with this person if it's what you need to do. She'll call in this spiritual help if that's what you need. She's very much a call in the collective kind of person. If a goddess was a person, that's how she works. And this is another piece of the sisterhood goddess edge. They work in collaboration with others. And this is really, 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 really hard to find. So another way we can find perhaps forgotten goddesses of sisterhood is looking back into myths. Now, I'm not saying this is 100% right, but a way we can look at it is looking back into myths and legends from patriarchal, Christiany-timey writers and legends, and trying to see where are the huge sisterhood offenders, where are the backstabbers, where are the people who are literally out to cause other women grief and harm. Because sometimes it's that maybe they are a being of discord and strife, but more often, sometimes it's that being or goddess or character once upon a time was a goddess who represented togetherness, community, and feminine power, and it had to be dismantled to fit into this very weird Christian take the power away from the women, separate them, make them vulnerable kind of abusery mindset thing that folks had going on back in those days, and still now in a lot of places in the world. So when we look at Morgan Le Fay's history, we can see so many tales of her being an absolute butthole to Guinevere. When we look at Guinevere's story, all we can see is competition. The sisterhood stories we have that are most popular from Morgan Le Fay and the Arthurian mythos are Guinevere being a big fat bee to Morgan Le Fay, and this competition, this scarcity feeling over men, this overlapping war between sisters. I think that's there because they represented the opposite of that, and it had to be dismantled. That's my thought. Yeah, it's just a bit suspicious, and a lot of the reasons are just very... No one goes that hard into revenge over something so tiny and slight, which is what you see all the time in those stories. So those are my three very specific ways that we can find a goddess of sisterhood. We look for where she is pitted against other women. And if we go back to my Aphrodite example, we don't think of Aphrodite as a goddess of sisterhood, though obviously she is, as we've spoken about it today. But the stories that we have of her are of the other goddesses being jealous of her. The most famous story we have in the modern world of Aphrodite and other women is the Golden Apple story, and the myth of where Paris, the hottie, from, I don't know where he's from, but Paris is asked to decide whether Hera, Athena, or Aphrodite is the most beautiful, and he chooses Aphrodite because she's the smartest and she knows exactly what he wants. And that is throwing those three powerful goddesses into direct competition, warfare, and gossipy bitchiness against each other. Yeah, that's the story we have. Even though so much of Aphrodite's mythology is about harmony and being part of a team. Yeah, so the things that get saved and rescued and amplified over the last 1,000 years are not always what was amplified before then, and often they're amplified to obscure a deeper truth. So that is my belief on sisterhood goddesses. Morgan Le Fay for me is the ultimate sisterhood goddess. She is part of a sisterhood. She merges and shapeshifts in and out of whatever you want. Shapeshifting's another sneaky one, and another magic of sisterhood goddesses and that ability to kind of blur at the edges into other things is that they're often goddesses of divination and prophecy, because they can open up into the liminal spaces for something else to come through. Yeah, so that's why in mystery school we do oracle work and we learn the arts of the oracle in the Priestess of Avalon year, and why in sister year we have, it's called sister year, and also we have a whole season connecting with Morgan Le Fay as sister, because in the modern world we have to reclaim these myths and stories that pit women against each other and heal our own ingrained wounding, because it's there. It is there. Yeah, the scarcity, the fear, the insecurity is all still there in all of us, including myself, and we need to work on healing it so we can create Avalon alive in the world like we always dreamed of. So if you'd like to learn more about Morgan Le Fay, I have my fancy Morgan Le Fay Priestess Activation, which will teach you all about Morgan Le Fay and give you a beautiful guided Avalon activation and a ritual, because I throw too much stuff at you. And every October I open the doors for my Morgan Le Fay Mystery School Sister Year, which is a year working with the Wheel of the Year to learn the 8 skills of Morgan Le Fay to be a badass priestess of Avalon. Thanks for joining me today. It's been lovely to hang out with you.